Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. So Maleficent, Mistress of Evil and Zombieland Double Tap were released in theaters last weekend. Let's see how those movies did at the box office. Alright, let's jump right in. So Maleficent came in number one. It pulled in about 36 million in its opening weekend. These are estimate figures, by the way. The actuals will come in later on today. So Maleficent, Mistress of Evil is the sequel to Maleficent, which was released back in 2014. Stars Angelina Jolie as the, evil fairy, and this movie is from her perspective, the Sleeping Beauty tale from the perspective of the evil fairy's perspective, and how she became the way she is, right? And she was a caring fairy before until something bad happened to her, and she's taking care of Sleeping Beauty right now. And I guess another woman, the queen, came and took that role from her, and she's pissed in Mistress of Evil. So she is fighting back, taking back her foster daughter or adopted daughter and kingdom, etc., right? So that's Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. This is a movie that I thought could probably open somewhere in the 55 to 60 million range, because the first movie did pretty well, relatively well, with an opening of 69 million, 241 million domestically, and an additional 517 million overseas, for a worldwide total of 758 million on a budget of 180 million. So that's why we're seeing Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. This is the sequel, but it's 5 years later. All right, the reviews at that time for the first movie was 58%, which is decent, almost fresh there, almost a fresh movie, but Mistress of Evil, the reviews were worst, 40% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, but a A- similar score is surprisingly, right? So the people who saw it, I guess maybe tend toward the younger folks, gave it an A, or average an A, right? But the critics gave it like 40%, so which is kind of rotten there, and open only to 36 million, so very far from my projection of 55 to 60 million. I thought I was pretty sure that the sequel would would open less than the first movie, but this one is half. Even though it didn't open that well here, let's see how it did overseas. Overseas, it put in 118 million for a worldwide total of 154 million. I mean, a good opening overseas, right? I don't know how wide it opens, how many territories it open, but at the 118 million so far is encouraging. Unfortunately, the budget for the movie is a little bit more expensive than the first movie. I mean, the budget for the first movie is 180 million, and the budget for Mistress of Evil is around there as well, 185 million, so a little bit more expensive. Unfortunately, it looks like it's sinking here. The 36 million opening is not going to do it domestically, and the poor reviews critically, but the audience score kind of makes up for it. But how much word of mouth will this movie have? And that is the question. The opening is what it is, right? Hopefully this movie will have legs through the holiday season, to make up for the lackluster opening. And overseas, like I said, right? I don't know how wide the movie is released overseas, but the 118 million, if it's still early, it's encouraging. But if it's already released in the bigger territories like China and elsewhere, then it's not that optimistic. But we'll know more as the weeks goes along. All right, moving to number 2 is Joker. The origin story of the DC character. This movie was the top movie last weekend, but it fell around 48% to number 2, to pull in about 29.2 million. Domestic gross is 245 million so far, and let's see how it did overseas. Overseas, it pulled in 490 million for a worldwide total of 737 movie. And by the way it's going, right, it's on track to become the highest grossing R-rated superhero movie. The budget for Joker is about 55 million, so even less than the budget for Deadpool, right? And like Deadpool, this is a movie that the studio didn't have a lot of confidence in. They give them a small budget, like I said in the previous podcast. Like Deadpool, this is a proven movie, and Joker proved to the studio that an R-rated superhero movie could work. And 55 million budget, a huge return worldwide. Like I say, it's good. 700 million plus worldwide, and it's on track to become the highest grossing R-rated superhero movie ever, beating out Deadpool even, right? So I'm sure that this movie will give Warner Brothers confidence to invest in more R-rated darker subject matter in their superhero movies. I mean, I know they have more characters to draw from, and they don't have to be from the Justice League characters, the more well-known superhero characters, and they can pull in from some of the lesser knowns, in like what Marvel has been doing with their characters, right? They were able to elevate some lesser known characters into the A-list of superheroes and able to integrate those characters into the larger storyline. And with Joker, right, Warner Brothers doesn't have to make movies about heroes all the time, right? It can be anti-heroes, it can be villains. Joker could work, right? So yeah, it opens a new avenue for them, and they were kind of like taken back by the success that Marvel and Disney has with their cinematic universe, right? They scrambled. It took them a couple tries, Warner Brothers, right? Scrambled and took them a couple tries to come up with something that worked for them, right? Their own style. And right now they're starting to figure out, right? Nolan's Batman, Joker, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, those are pretty successful, right? Except now they have to figure out with their like mainline characters, like Superman, Batman. So ironically, Joker is a movie that gives Warner Brother hope for their comic book franchises. Okay, number 3 is one of the new releases last weekend, and that is Zombieland Double Tap. It is a sequel to the 2009 movie, zombie movie, that stars Woody Harrelson, Emma Stone, Jesse Eisenberg, Abigail Breslin, and others, right? Bill Murray made a cameo. In the sequel, they have, like I say, it's a reunion movie of sorts, and they just included more of what made the first movie, I guess, bankable. This one, they have Rosario Dawson and Luke Wilson, Dan Aykroyd's in here, I believe, as well. In addition to, the writers, directors, the original actors, they're all in here. Like I said, this is a reunion movie. They upped the budget to 42 million. The first movie was like 20 million plus. I say this movie could probably open somewhere in the 20 to 25 million range. The first movie opened to 25 million, became a surprise. But the second movie I said could probably open to, 20 to 25 because it's like 10 years later, and and this movie opened a bit better than I thought it did, right? Opened to 26.7 million, so which is a little bit higher than the upper limits of my projection. The first movie, was very well reviewed, 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the sequel dipped a bit, 66% on Rotten Tomatoes, B+ cinema score. Okay, let's see how it did overseas. It hasn't opened that wide overseas yet, only about 5.3 million from overseas for a worldwide total of 32 million. This is a movie that the studio Sony had hoped to open somewhere in the 30 to 35 million range, but 26 million is actually pretty good. Let's see how well it holds up in the second weekend. Okay, number 2 is the Addams Family, the animated version. In its second weekend, it pulled in about 16 million, drop off about 47% from the previous weekend, which is a pretty good hold. Domestic gross is about 57 million so far, and let's see how it did overseas. It hasn't opened overseas yet, I believe. Okay, so it looks like it opened overseas, but Box Office Mojo just hasn't tallied up the numbers for the overseas. Yeah, so 56 million for now in the second weekend, but the hold is pretty good. It is a family movie in time for Halloween, October, and it did better than I expected. I said this movie could probably open somewhere in the 15 to 20 million range, but it opened to 30. It's just like based on the live action. I thought there wasn't an audience for the Addams Family, but they, to their credit, right, they animated the Addams Family, and that turned into more of a children's movie, and as such, right, it's finding success there. Okay, number 5 is Gemini Man, the Will Smith action thriller. It pulled in about 8.5 million in second weekend. Drop off is about 59% almost. Domestic gross is 36.5 million, and let's see how it did overseas. Overseas, it pulled in 82.2 million for a worldwide total of 118 million. That's not gonna cut it for a movie that costs 138 million. This is a movie that's directed by Ang Lee, and I guess the movie that make this special, like I said, is the high frame rates and the effects, the motion capture they used to create a younger version of Will Smith's character. In this movie he plays a hitman who's being tracked by a younger version of himself, a clone essentially, and they used motion capture for his younger self, the aging as well, right? But I read that only a third of the movie theaters could play this high frame rate version of Gemini Man. So a lot of people miss what made this movie, I guess, this movie. From the way things are going, it looked like domestically, Gemini Man might not cross the 100 million mark. Overseas, it is doing better overseas, but is it enough to make its production, budget back? 138 million. We'll see. All right, number 6 is the latest DreamWorks animation, Abominable. It put in 3.5 million in its fourth weekend, drop off of about 42%. Domestic gross is about 53.9 million, and let's see how it did overseas. Overseas, it put in 60.8 million for a worldwide total of 114.7 million. Budget for this movie is about 75 million. This is Abominable is more of an original story. It's not a sequel, and it focuses on I guess Asian teenagers who's helping a Yeti back to its home, get back to his home. It's not finding that big of an audience here, nor is it doing it overseas. I thought this would be an overseas play, right, because of the casting of of the Asian characters and Asian story, but in China it only put in about 14 million, and it looks like it's not latching on in other territories as well. But since it's only made for 75 million, hey, there's still the streaming services and home video. Alright, number 7 is Downton Abby. It is the continuation of the TV series. It pulled in about 3.1 million in its fifth weekend. Drop off is about 37% from the previous weekend, and domestic gross is at 88 million, which is quite remarkable. Let's see, overseas it pulled in about 75.5 million for a worldwide total of 164 million. I don't know what the budget for Downton Abbey is, but it's probably somewhere in the 45 million range, right? It's kind of like a period piece and all. So yeah, 164 million worldwide with 88 million of that domestic so far. Still going. I count this as a success. Alright, number 8 is the biopic Judy, starring Renee Zellweger as Judy Garland. In its fourth weekend, it pulled in about 2 million, drop off about 36% from the previous weekend. For domestic gross of 19 million so far, and it hasn't opened that wide yet, but hey, we're gonna hear more about Judy during awards time. This is it's about biopics about Judy Garland. Renee Zellweger is getting nods for her role as Garland, so we might see an awards bump later on during the award season. All right, number 9 is Hustlers, the Jennifer Lopez stripper movie, co-starring Constance Wu as well. This movie pulled in about 2.1 million in the 6th weekend, drop off of about 47% from the previous weekend. Domestic gross is 101 million, it crossed the 100 million mark. The budget for this movie is 20 million, so it's doing pretty well domestically. Let's see how it did overseas. Overseas, it pulled in 23.6 million for a worldwide total of 125 million. And I believe the overseas figure is not, all in yet. I think they're slowly rolling this one out, and I suspect this movie, would do well overseas, since you don't really need, to know the words, the language, for a movie like this. And I think this movie, like I say, appeals to, certain demographics. All right, let's close out the top 10 with It Chapter 2. It pulled in 1.5 million in its 7th weekend, drop off about 52% from the previous weekend. Domestic gross is 209 million, 210, let's round it up. And let's see, overseas it pulled in 239 million for a worldwide total of 449 million. I believe the budget for It Chapter 2 is somewhere in the 60 to 70 million range. So even though it looks like it's going to fall, well short of what the first movie made, still a huge moneymaker for Warner Brothers. All right, that's it for the box office top 10. Let's move on to the new releases. I believe we're going to have like two major ones, and that is Black and Blue and Countdown. Let's start off with Black and Blue. It stars Naomi Harris, Tyrese Gibson, Mike Coulter, Frank Grillo. Harris stars as a rookie cop who witnessed and recorded a murder committed by, fellow cops. Then she goes on the run from, the corrupt cops, as well as the gang members who are in on it. Let's see, this movie is released in around 2,000 theaters. Is reviews wise like 50% currently on Rotten Tomatoes. This number could go down as more reviews comes in. As a comparison, like these bad cop movies like Brooklyn's Finest back in 2010 opened to 13.3 million. Training Day back in 2001 with Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke did better, opened to 22.6 million. But that was with Ethan Hawke and Denzel Washington, right? So for Black and Blue, I believe this movie could open somewhere between 10 to 15 million, because based on previous movies in this genre, what the previous movies in this genre opened to. But I wouldn't be surprised if it opened higher if like the target demographic turned out for this one. But judging by like I say, previous movies, these type of movies doesn't really have that big of an appeal. All right, let's move on to Countdown, a horror movie from STX Entertainment. This movie stars Elizabeth Lai, I believe that's how L-A-I-L, Lyle, stars as a nurse who downloaded an app that can tell people how much time they have left, right? This is a horror movie. And once the timer goes down, that person dies, because of, due to supernatural causes, like, I don't know, ghosts, whatever, come and get them. So why need an app? I don't know. Well, anyway, the conceit or the gimmick for this movie is the phone app. And horror movies don't need phone apps, but hey, this one does. Okay, so Countdown, this one needs a phone, and they couldn't get rid of phones. Teenagers, like when their time's about to run, they try to get rid of the phone. You've seen the trailer, right? Lai tried to buy a new phone, but the app installs itself in the new phone. Anyway, me and horror movies, right? I don't know how to predict these ones. All right, so. Similar movie in this one is kind of like Unfriended, right, through the internet, and Unfriended, its sequel, Unfriended Dark Web. So Unfriended did surprisingly well. It opened to 15.8 million, went on to make 32 million domestically and 64 million worldwide. Hence, there's a sequel, Unfriended Dark Web, which opened lower, 3 million, 9 million domestically and 16 million worldwide. So, they saw Unfriended, it made money. The producers made a sequel. I'm sure it made money because, it's cheap to make. So Countdown is sort of like that, right? They took, what's kind of hip with the teens. the phone apps right now, and make a horror movie out of it. And fill it up with ghosts that kills people. Anyway, okay, all right. So, Unfriended did pretty well. I mean, I thought no one would go and watch that movie, but they did. They did. Similar to this one as well, it is an R-rated horror movie, and there's an audience for that, right? Who else? What else are they gonna watch, right? The Addams Family. So countdown. I'm gonna predict a 8 to 10 million opening for Countdown. I wouldn't be surprised if it opened higher. Because you don't know what the teenagers are gonna go and watch, right? So 10 to 15 million for Black and Blue, and 8 to 10 million for Countdown. All right, that's it for this video. Tune in next week to see how I did. Until then, take care. Bye bye.